Hi everyone, in this video we'll be introducing IntLists, but before we get there, let's start with a little motivation. So, what is one problem with arrays, right? Why can't we just use arrays for the rest of our lives and be happy? So, the main problem is that they're a fixed length, right? Let's say I have an array of length 3, and I decide to add one more person to that array. We can't, right? Because an array is a fixed length. So, one alternative or one possible solution to this problem is using a linked data structure or, in this class, an int list. So what is a linked data structure and what is a linked list, right? We can think about a linked list as a linked chain of objects, okay? So we have a chain of objects, right? Each link in this chain contains an int first and an int list rest. The int first corresponds to the integer that's at that spot in the list. Okay, I think it's helpful to see an example here. So if we're looking at this int list x at the bottom, right, this int list x right here, what we will see is that if I wanted to store the elements 5, 10, and 15 in a list, I could use an int list to achieve it. How I would create the int list is the first link in my int list would store the value 5, and it would store a pointer to the next link in my linked list, which will store the value 10, and a pointer to the last link, which stores the value 15, and then the pointer to the next link is null because we're at the end of that linked list. Okay, so for a quick exercise, let's try to fill in this line of code x equals blank so that x is equal to this int list below. Perfect. Okay, so the answer here is that all we want to do is instantiate x to be a new int list whose first value is 5 and whose dot rest is another int list whose value is 10, and that int list dot rest should be another int list whose first and rest are 15 and null respectively. Okay, so here's a quick example of just like how we can create an int list and how it kind of looks, right? So what benefits does an int list have over arrays, right? We've kind of touched upon it. So we know that they aren't a fixed length, but why not? So if we look at the same x from before, notice that in any int list, it's easy to add a link somewhere in this chain, right? I could add a link to the end, I could add a link to the beginning. All I have to do is change a couple pointers and bang, I've changed the length of an int list. So for a quick example, in order to add a 0 to the beginning, I want to add a link in the beginning right here, whose value for first is 0 and who's pointing to what x is currently pointing to. And I want to set x equal to that. Okay, so that's in essence what we've done right here. By setting x equal to a new int list of 0 comma x, we say that x is now pointing to an int list whose first is 0 and whose dot rest is the old dot or the old value that x is pointing to. Okay, so let's quickly walk through one exercise just to gain some intuition for int lists. I won't actually be showing the solution since there's a lot of int list practice in the upcoming labs, but if you're curious and you want some more practice before we dive in to other int list things in this lecture, try implementing the method get int I, which returns the item at the ith index. Okay, so that is all for this video. I hope you all found it helpful and stay tuned for the next video of how we could potentially improve upon this int list so far.